You don't need another strategy and you don't need somebody's permission. You need to start listening to everything that you have inside of you because you already know the step to take.
Well, hey, welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And I am so excited to introduce you to Cari Kenzie, who is the founder of Kenzie, a leadership advisory firm helping high-capacity women founders and executives build alignment, transferable value, and freedom in every phase of business, especially in the transition from success to significance. She's a former CEO who scaled and exited a multi-million-dollar company, and Cari brings a rare blend of entrepreneurial experience, energetic intelligence, and strategic precision to her work. Through Kenzie frameworks like Exit by Design and the Leadership Reframe, she guides leaders to lead with soul, scale with fun, and protect the legacy of what they built without losing themselves in the process. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. I love your energy.
Wow, likewise, very mutual. You know, Cari, when I was looking at your website and getting to know you even better as we were preparing for this show. So as I was looking over your website and getting ready for the show, I just kept thinking, I wish I met you before I ever started my business. And I'm sure you've probably heard that or something like that before from other female entrepreneurs. And I'll just tell you, like for me, it was like things that I would have put in place in the very beginning that I now have to go back to do in order to feel peace. It's almost like when you buy a house and you let things kind of get into a lot of disrepair. So Cari, what is one question that you wish more entrepreneurs would ask you, but they don't?
Oh my gosh, the question I wish they would ask me? I'm always like, the question I wish they would ask themselves. Gosh. You know, the question I wish they would ask me is, like you said, I wish I had me in the beginning. So the best question for me is always, what is it I need to know that I don't know? What am I not planning for?
And what do you find is typically missing? Like, what is it that we don't know?
Specifically for women founders, we don't think about the exit.
They just don't think
about the exit. We get so focused in the everyday. We're building the business. We're doing the things. We don't take a look at where is this going? Like, what is the ultimate goal when I get to that place of, I want to step away from my business. I want to transition out. I need to build the team to take over. The freedom that I got into this business to have, like, I want to experience that. We don't think about how to get to that place.
You know, the thing that came up for me with that is I was like, you know, I was so busy worried about whether I could even start, you know, like when I very first began, because I came out of corporate America and I'm like, oh, the only thing that I really, really want to be, I really, really want to get paid for is like being a coach. That sounds amazing. You know, I want to do something that's more specialized in my zone of genius. And I remember at the time, like my main consuming thought was like, is this even possible? Like, can we even do this thing? So I know for me, that was probably one of the big reasons why I wasn't thinking about the end, is because I was so consumed with the beginning. But you know what happens is eventually you do start. So if somebody was to raise awareness to how important it is to think about the end as close to the beginning as possible, like what are some of those things that they can start practicing right away?
I think start practicing not having yourself be the center of the business from the beginning.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? When we don't think about the end, if we don't have exit as a business strategy while we're building the business, all we're doing is building ourselves a job.
Yeah.
So that's
with like a worse boss, because then, you know, you never get time off.
You never get time off, right?
You're not
Your
paid
expectations
enough.
are so high that it's like, are you ever going to be able to reach them? And that's what we do. When I built my first organization, the best thing I ever did was hire somebody to come alongside me. As female founders, we feel like we can do it all because we can. Problem is, when we feel like we can do it all and we can, then we do, and we forget to step away. And we forget that somebody else can come alongside and that it's possible for us to be able to receive the support so that we can take the vacation, take the day off, not work 60, 70 hours a week. Of course, in the beginning, that's what we're doing. We're building, we're passionate. It's not a problem. It becomes a problem when over time you have built a system that is built on you.
Yeah, big time. And, I still remember the day that I had that aha moment of like, oh, Amanda, you're not an entrepreneurial coach, or you're not a coach. You are an architect of a business that is outside of you, and you happen to be providing the coaching services inside of this company. And that's actually what led me to creating the brand, the Coaches Plaza. So I'm at a stage of my business where I am still largely, doing a lot of the doing and providing a lot of the expertise. But I made the decision to have a logo style brand about 5-6 years ago. And the whole reason why is like, I knew that I had to be where I was, like you said, when you're building, you gotta build. And there's going to be different phases when you're perhaps pivoting the business where you're still really building, which is where I am right now. But it is always with that intention of like, at some stage, the business needs to either change hands, or it needs to be absorbed by a different business, or it needs to, wind down. But who wants to intentionally wind something down that you put so much of your life force into? Like, why take all that risk? Why have all that burden,
Here's two things that come up for me when you say that. As business owners, as coaches, if you have stepped into a business as a coach and you're like, this is what I want to do, and that's it, I just want to coach, you still have to be thinking of the end in mind. Okay? Because if that end is not a transition of a sale, it's not a transition to a leadership team, it is just simply a transition into your what's next, then you need to be and strategic about how you're saving and pulling funds in order to be able to have that to land on when that exit comes. So that's one thing. As a business owner, be sure that you're looking at that throughout the course of your business. 50% of exits come without warning. Okay, they come because of burnout, distress, there's a disagreement, there's a divorce. That's how most exits happen. You're blindsided. And when that comes, have you prepared for it? That's the question. So you either prepare by building a business that can scale, that can sell or transition, or you build a business that funds you in the process. You're setting that aside. You've got an investment banker, a wealth advisor who's helping you to be able to curate and build that so that if that exit comes, you know that you're protected and taken care of.
I think that's actually one of the biggest myths in the coaching industry. And I know I definitely got bit by that bug, which was, there's all these 7-figure coaches that lure you, into this world, so to speak. And I was like fighting hard, tooth and nail, to be like, okay, got to figure out what are all the things that make you a 7-figure business? What makes you a 7-figure coach? And as it turns out, most coaching businesses, fast forward to the punchline part. It is a cash flowing vehicle. And I didn't have the financial education or awareness when I very first started. And I noticed most coaches really don't. They don't have it's not a question of intelligence. It's actually more of a question of exposure.
Yes.
Have you had the exposure to people like yourself who understand the language of business, the language of finance, the language of strategy? And I got to tell you, for me, I was really disappointed in myself for a while because I was like, well, I was a strategist at a big firm. I know what strategy is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always working with the best information. And so when I realized the goal was not to build this big balloon of a coaching business per se, it could be, like you said, simply a cash flow vehicle.
Yes.
And those can be really lean, mean, awesome little businesses. They don't have a lot of sale value, but you can actually generate a huge amount of, profit through that method. But then you have to pair it with financial education, to your point. You have to understand that there is a long game. How do you help people see this, right? Because I think I can't remember not being told. That didn't make a lot of sense. Hopefully you're following, listeners. But there wasn't a time in my life where I didn't hear something like save for retirement, have a 401k. And when I was in Canada, it was an RRSP, save for the future. I got that advice. I think everybody gets that advice. And yet most people find themselves making decisions that like ignore that, you know? So it's like around us all the time, but we still don't do the planning. What is something that you like to lead your clients through in terms of how to think both in the long term and the short?
Well, that's where you've really got to sit. When I'm sitting with clients, I want to understand, like, what is that future for you? And I don't care if it's, I'm going to stay in this business and I want to be in it for 15, 20 years. That's awesome. When you retire, what do you want that to look like? Right? And then can we start talking about the wealth? We're all building into something. You step into being an entrepreneur or a business owner because you want more freedom, you want more flexibility, and you want the ability to create the income and to like have no ceiling to it. I can create whatever it is I want to create. That's awesome. Okay. So if you're doing that for a reason. You're trying to get somewhere. Where's that somewhere you're trying to get? Now let's take that and let's start to back it up. And if we look at it today and we see where you're at today versus where you want to be, this is your gap. How are you going to get there? And let's get strategic around some of the different ways that you can pull those levers. And if that means that you start to look at your business and go, this is amazing. I'm not going to take every dollar I make and seep it back into the business because I have to take some profit first and I've got to put that aside. This is why those multi-million-dollar coaching businesses, right? Look at the P&L on the back end and how much revenue versus how much am I soaking back into the business. I hear that so often from clients, right? I built a $1 million coaching business and I'm not making much on the back end of it because I'm soaking everything back in. Okay, well, we got to get a little bit more strategic around how we're playing things out, right?
I think that's the thing, especially in a coaching business. And I've had, quite unfortunately, I didn't get to seven figures, but I did see like that. It's kind of like, to describe this to you, listener, when I scaled my business too fast, that I like she said, like all the money just ends up warping right back in to the business. Think of it kind of like you've got these frequencies of all the different things that are going on in your business, and just imagine that they're all components that are all working together. And so I describe it kind of like an engine that doesn't have its timing right. It starts like knocking around and overheating, and it could push a rod and fail at any time. And luckily we had the support of a similar expert to Cari, who helped us to recognize that we weren't doing a good job of understanding the attribution of our effort, and i.e. how much money we were putting towards advertising and sales teams and all these things that were supposed to create more freedom and create more time. And we ended up having to make crazy difficult decisions, just as Cari's describing, including and up to firing family members. But we had to kind of like bring things back down to a peaceful place where the frequency wasn't as high. And even if there was some knocking around, we could fix it, right? So that we had this foundation that we could then grow from, which is, where we are today.
Yeah.
Cari, I have to imagine that when you're working with people, I know for me, like when I finally asked for help from someone like you, I was so scared to do it because I knew that it was a mess, right? And I knew that I had done some things, including like, I knew about Profit First. I knew all about Profit First. And I could just like see where I had betrayed myself like the whole time. And so, not the whole time, but I'll be a little more generous to myself. But the point is like, I just feel like a lot of entrepreneurs need to understand and to hear why it's important to maybe work with a third party to at least take a look at it. Because I know I was so hesitant. And if I had engaged my consultant 9 months before I did, I would have been in a very different position.
Yeah. So and I love that you say that too, because I think too often we end up, it's like here's the thing that I would say to anybody who's listening, like you already know. If you do, come on, we already know. We simply are looking for either somebody to help us escape the knowing or somebody to give us permission to step into it. Those are the two things that we're looking for. The scariest part is bringing somebody on board who's going to push you into it. Okay? Because it is, and I did have a client say this, she's like, it's kind of like I'm lifting up my skirt, right? You're getting back and you're seeing everything behind
it's like every stupid thing you did.
Intimate. Yes, right? However, if you want to stay, in the knowing that is sitting and just like tick, 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 tick all the time without making any effort towards it, it will come up and it will smack you at some point. Okay? Or you can just step in and go, you know what? I'm human. Because let me tell you right now, I've done all the same things. Okay? I had the mess that was behind the scenes. And that's why I do what I do now. Because I needed me back then. Right? So what you're offering by stepping out and allowing yourself the vulnerability is to finally come back into an alignment with what it is you do, with the passion of where you want to be, and to allow that to happen in a place of ease, period. That's all you're doing. It's vulnerability to find clarity. It's vulnerability to step forward and finally get the thing that you have desired the entire time. The reason you stepped into the business to begin with.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I mean, like coming out of that experience personally, I learned something about learning, which is like, I've now made this distinction of there's learning in the sense of like knowing, in the sense of consuming information, like you have data. And then there's like learning in the sense of applied knowledge. And that is a different thing. And so often, especially in today's age, that's consuming a lot of content, such as this fabulous podcast. So please keep listening. But we consume so much and we get so many voices knocking around in our head about how you're supposed to do things. And it creates, I think, a huge dissonance, right? Because you start drowning in all these shoulds and coulds and woulds and, you know, but at the same time, there's so much pressure for a business owner, coaches, non-coaches, just any business owner. You don't want to be seen bleeding. You don't want to be seen suffering, and you don't want, right? Because like that's just super off-putting to new business. So you got to keep it together somehow. What I did learn though is those two types of learning. I think the reason why the applied learning is so hard, and I'd love your take on this, is because in order to actually change your behavior, you have to admit that you were wrong. And I think humans want to be right more than anything. Now you can tell me I'm wrong about that. But I know from my own experience, that was probably like I have to humble myself by admitting that I was wrong.
Well, and that's where it's not that you were ever wrong. So let me just place that out there, right? Because that's where there's a blame and a shame that we take on the moment we think we've done something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything you could with the information you had in that particular moment.
That's absolutely fair, right?
Now, you know something different. And in that knowing something different, you have already grown. So what you're doing is you're allowing somebody else to come in and walk alongside you, and you're showing them like, here's the mess. What do we need to do to clean this up? Right? Because I know this happened. What do we need to do to clean this up? So I think if we can start looking at it that way, as opposed to I was wrong, but I did what I knew to do in the moment, I now know better. I now know that something needs to shift. That is the thing that's going to bring you closer back to that wisdom that sits inside. I say all the time, you don't need another strategy. Sorry, you don't. Go to another conference, sit in another room. It's perfectly fine, but you don't need another strategy and you don't need somebody's permission. You need to start listening to everything that you have inside of you because you already know the step to take. You already know the thing to do. You just stopped listening to yourself when you started shooting based on everybody else's expectation. When you come back into alignment, you will get a kind of clarity that you will just intuitively know the next step to take.
I love it. That's so good, Cari. Thank you so much for being here on the show today. Before we let you go anywhere, though, how do we keep in touch with you?
So the best way to find me is going to be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you're going to be able to find Kinza, and you can also find Cari Kenzie.
Amazing. And dear listener, if you prefer other channels or if you just want to go straight to her website, we'll make sure we have all of those links in the show notes below. Cari, thank you so much for joining me on the show and having such a beautiful, candid conversation today.
Gosh, thanks. This was amazing. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you right back. And listener, if you appreciated this, I'm sure you've got 3 friends who would also love to hear what Cari had to share about setting your business up for success from the beginning all the way through to the end. So grab the link to this episode, go ahead and text it, email it, send it in a carrier pigeon wallet or whatever that is. I don't know how carrier pigeons send their messages, but the point is you should share it with somebody. And you know, if you're really loving the show, you may just want to stop by and give us a little review. keep it honest, but we really appreciate any positive reviews that we get because it helps people decide whether they want to spend their precious time consuming our show. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll be back with another episode very shortly. Don't miss it. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you again soon. Until then, do what matters.